You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ13 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Hi, welcome back to Women Making Moves, where we celebrate the moves that women are making. My name is Amy Pons, founder of Unlock the Magic Coaching and Healing. I'm joined today with Shannon Nutter. Shannon is a global executive, board leader, and business advisor with over 2 decades of leadership at top organizations like the Vanguard Group, Deloitte, and General Motors, and consulting for firms including Microsoft, Toyota. Shannon Nutter is a recognized expert in business strategy, product and offer development, technology-driven transformation, and customer experience. Her executive career spans the U.S. and Australia, where she has shaped high-growth businesses, influenced financial services ecosystems, and collaborated closely with boards to drive strategic growth, manage risk, and oversee business performance. Most recently, she led the design, build, and launch of a new retirement business for Vanguard in Australia. Within the first year, the business earned $1 billion in AUM and multiple industry awards. She has been a global conference speaker, a guest on podcasts in the US, Europe, and Australia, and has been quoted in Forbes and other business publications. Shannon's leadership extends to both board positions and advisory roles. She is currently the chair for Sparely, a European startup, and regularly posts thought leadership from both the executive and board perspectives. In addition to her corporate and board work, Shannon founded and led the development of My Classroom Economy, a free program that has been used by over 1.2 million students to learn financial responsibility. She earned a Bachelor of Arts in Economics and International Studies from Macalester College and an MBA from Duke University's Fuqua School of Business. Shannon lives near Philadelphia and has 2 sons. Shannon, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Reading your bio is giving me a flashback. What is that? What is that? When you, a deja vu or
Yeah.
of that high octane corporate vibe that I was in for 20 years. Most recently, I was head of digital payment wallets for Discover Card, Discover Network, and now Capital One. So I definitely understand that big world. And listeners, stay with me. We talk about this a lot about how I personally unsubscribed from that corporate world almost 3 years ago in an effort to create the balance we've never seen, both in the workplace, but also day-to-day society between, I'm going to say energies, between the masculine and feminine energies. And that's not necessarily by gender, but in my personal experience and what I continue to see, which I'd love your insight on first and foremost, is that I feel, and I've seen and I've experienced that we only learned in, I'm going to broad brush, we only learned in the workplace to be skewed in more of the masculine energy, which is action, power, structure, money. And we've stayed there for many hundreds of years. And it was actually the 9-to-5 was created, first of all, by the auto industry in the industrial age, and then also created for men by men, which is based on a 24-hour production cycle, which is not the experience of, and this is where I am getting into gender, like of a woman's body, a woman's cycle. As I told you, I'm in my luteal phase this week, and I'm not working that hard because I don't feel good. So I say all of this to you because that's why I personally unsubscribed, because I felt and I was experiencing that it was such an imbalance that I wanted to come out in the world and go from the other side. Because, oh, by the way, it's not specific to gender also that we've been skewed in the masculine, because at my corporate world, I would talk to women leaders and it was like, stop complaining, we had it worse. And that didn't make me feel good or help at all. It's like, oh no, I'm looking to you to help me change this. And they were like, no, there wasn't an appetite. So I feel everybody kind of learned this one way to be in business. And I'm on the other side showing individuals and organizations how we can create the balance between, oh, we can take action, absolutely, but from a place where there's empathy, creation, flow, which is that feminine energy. This is a time and place. The paradigm is shifting toward that balance. And I feel and I find that many people that are only comfortable in that masculine energy, they're not having a fun time right now because we're trying to create that balance. So let me know if anything resonates with you from what I've just said, because I feel that this will flow into the amazing recent project that you launched that we'll get into that I want to chat about. So I just wanted to nod a little bit to like my listeners are like, what's happening? We're talking about corporate today.
No, I think you're exactly right. And it's interesting. I do think what you just described ties into some of what I've been doing recently, but I think there is an absolute need for the kind of, let me call it female strengths to show up more in organizations and boards. I mean, you only need to look at engagement rates for organizations around the world. Like Gallup's latest numbers, I think, were 31% of people are engaged. That is horrific. And when you look at the strengths that repeatedly are shown to be more dominant for women than male leaders, things like being able to build really strong cultures, having empathy for your teams, having EQ, all of which, by the way, I think have been painted for years as, quote, soft skills, as if they have no value. But now all the data would demonstrate that those soft skills are actually really hard skills that drive innovation, they drive results, they drive better shareholder value. And so it's unfortunate that I think those things that women are really, really good at, generally speaking, have been discounted for so many years in organizations. And then you look around and you go, well, organizations are failing at this. Well, guess what? They also have fewer female leaders, fewer women on boards. I mean, I think there's a direct correlation. And I'm certainly one that believes we need far more female leaders, both in organizations and on boards, to care about culture, to care about people, to care about psychological safety, and to drive results.
My heart just pinged on so many things. And it's not suggesting that men can't or that men don't have that, because I'll go back to the energies. Every single human has both feminine and masculine energy. And to your point, because by virtue of both our lived experience, conditioning, but also in our DNA, there are certain parts of those energies that we have innate exceptional qualities around. And I'll go back to my time in corporate. I was that leader. I was the one that over COVID, I was the only one that retained my team, because every single day, and I felt like it was the least I could do. We did way more, but I was like, how's your heart today? What's going on in your world as we're in this global pandemic? And people were like, Amy, how are you keeping your team? I was like, I don't understand the question. Like, what? My whole job, especially over COVID, my job as a leader was to make sure my people were okay. Like, that's it. There were even riots downtown Chicago. And I was like on the phone with my employee. I'm like, do you need me to come get you? Like, I'm in the suburbs. Like, let me come get you. Or do you feel safe? They knew they not only had that safety from a mental, physical, but psychological, to your point, psychological safety. Whew, psychological safety is one of the most rampant epidemics across the workplace, I feel, in today's world. Or, excuse me, lack of a lack of psychological safety. And I'm an elder millennial. I grew up in corporate, like literally that was my first gig out of college, and I was taught, leave your stuff at the door, go in. And it was this copy paste approach that I needed to show up as a middle-aged white man, even though I was a 24-year-old. But it was that kind of grooming that I received my entire career until I reached 40, and I was like, oh no, like I couldn't anymore.
Right.
So what are we saying? So we're saying that at this time and place, and unfortunately, I'm one of the women who left the corporate world, women leaving in droves. The fact that since April, 300,000 Black women have been forced out of the workplace or otherwise. We're seeing it. I would venture to say by the end of the year, we're going to be in the million of women out of the mainstream workplace. Here's the thing, Shannon, I wanted to ask you. I don't have an appetite to go back into the workplace. Like, I know that we need more women in the workplace, and I'm not willing to go back into a culture where they're not willing to understand that we need that balance, not just of gender. I'm going to keep going back to the energies.
Right.
To understand, because those men and women in the corporate workplace that were the biggest kind of offenders of psychological safety, I got pretty brave in my latter days and I was like, why do you feel unsafe right now? They got real triggered. I'm like, okay, but they don't feel safe. It is their own work to do. And many of them, I've talked to some of the older executives, they're like, listen, I just want to get out with my money. I'm like, that's great for you. And beyond women, millennials and Z, we're not having it. We're not having this workplace culture where we're not valued. And so there's not going to be anyone to pass the torch to. It goes so much further beyond women. So, woo, thank you for letting me share all of that. I think some of my old stuff is coming up.
I'm triggering you. Yeah.
You're not.
I mean, I do think workplace cultures need to change, not just because they're not working for so many people, so many women are getting pushed out, so many minorities are getting pushed out. But like you said, I don't think they work for the next generations. I think, I've got one child in the corporate workplace, and he asks questions we would have never asked. He thinks things we would have never thought. Why do I need to go to a work happy hour? I don't really want to be hanging out with these people. I remember, the first time you told me that, I thought, what? We would have never questioned that. We would have just gone.
Go.
That was the expectation, or you would somehow get in trouble because, you needed to do this. But what, I thought, why do you need to go? If you don't really enjoy the time with those folks, why should you be expected? So, I just think they're questioning things that the previous generations didn't question. And I think that workplaces, they're going to have to change as a result, or people won't go work for these companies.
And then they'll just stop functioning. I mean, because there won't be anybody to pass it down to. I love what you just said. Is he Z or younger millennial?
I guess. Yeah. Gen Z. Yeah.
Gen Z. So I love that they came unabashedly out into this world and they don't have let me speak for myself. I was raised by baby boomers, and to your point, there's just things that it's just something you don't do. It didn't occur to me to ask those questions. And I love so much that Z, it's like they have such a unique thought. And here's the unfortunate part, Shannon, I'm not sure if you'll agree. What's unfortunate is that when Z or when it doesn't matter who it is, when someone has the audacity to challenge or to ask the questions based on their unique desires, their unique soul, or what they vibe with, depending on whether that person of authority, generationally, whomever, based on their lived experience and conditioning, they might see that as a fault. Or I think a lot of them see it as a fault, and they're actually going to penalize that person for it. Yeah. And this is where I feel the biggest disconnect is that instead of, and I don't mean to broad brush any generations, but I find a lot of times Boomer and X people in charge, they're more willing to just write someone off rather than being like, that's interesting. That's interesting that they have the courage to say, no, thank you. And I find a lot of times those Boomer or X leaders or people in charge are actually pissed because they didn't have that space to share that.
Think about it. I mean, I think instead of getting curious, and I relate it back to, I remember I was leading a team, gosh, it was probably 10 years ago now. And, like most leaders, every now and then I would host an after work happy hour. And I had an employee who came and very bravely said, "Hey, I'm an alcoholic, former alcoholic. I don't go into bars anymore and I won't come. That's not a place I can be." And I remember thinking, oh, what a learning for me. I should totally schedule some other things. And so I stopped having those kinds of work social events. Not that people couldn't go do that, but it's like, oh, well, then I hosted a breakfast and it was during work hours and we could all go to breakfast and have a meeting, or we could have a lunch, as opposed to just defaulting to what the norm was in the industry. It's like, oh, what an amazing opportunity to learn and to try something different that works for more people, for everyone on the team.
See, Shannon, that's the vibe. We need more people in charge to say exactly that. How cool of a learning, rather than having a snap judgment. And I'm not suggesting everyone does that, but I saw that the norm is what I saw was that it was that instant judgment rather than being like, that's interesting. And I did something similar. One of my employees didn't drink alcohol.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ13 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
And so I didn't have happy hours. I had a midday water cooler. And we would just get together. I'm like, what's the hot goss today? And I was just a dorky millennial. It was just kind of like a fun get away from your desk for a minute and let's gab.
Yeah.
And as I say that out loud, I can literally hear the most imbalanced masculine energies like shriek because they're like, absolutely not. That's a waste of time. But I love this piece about curiosity.
Mm.
If any of you just cringed at the fact that we took an hour out of the day just to gab, I invite you to get curious about that. Reach out to me and say, what did you gain from that? Was that not a productivity suck? No, it wasn't actually. Every day that gave the team like an oomph to go back and crush it the rest of the day. It was an awesome just lifter.
Yeah, well, and anytime I think teams can get to know each other better, right, that builds trust, and trust is the foundation for vulnerability, for debate, for great discussions, for being able to challenge one another and not get personally insulted. And ultimately, all of that leads to innovation, to better results, to better teamwork. It all ties together because we're humans. We're not machines.
Yeah.
We are humans, and all of us have great days and crappy days, ideas and bad ideas, and we need each other. We need each other and all of our collective strengths together to get to wherever it is we need to go.
Yeah. And I had this so many times where people were just afraid to share an idea because there were so many leaders in my ecosystem back then, mostly male. No, it's a good mix, male and female, that if it was an idea they didn't like, in the room, in front of everyone, they would berate the person. That was the go-to. And in contrast, for instance, when I would lead those same discussions, I would be so human about it. I'd be like, that idea gives me anxiety, but that's not your fault. That's mine. Let me take that back. I would just own it. And that fostered such a cool community space for me and for different varying levels throughout the organization. Because they're like, we know that when we're in Amy's brainstorm, we have such safety and autonomy and we're not going to get judged for it. And that's what I wanted to foster. So if I had any reaction, I was like, whoa, that's mine. That's awesome. I'm going to write it down. That's giving me heartburn, but That's mine, not yours. That's not yours. That's mine. Thank you so much for saying that,
Well, and that's the psychological safety we talked about. And it's probably the first thing I seek to build with any team that I lead or any group that I'm really involved with is, look, my ideas are not all the best ideas. No one's ideas are all the best ideas. We're going to debate, we're going to discuss, but it goes back to being curious, right? I mean, we all have that. Sometimes somebody says an idea and in your mind, right, you think, oh my God, that is the dumbest idea. But instead of saying that, you say, well, walk me through how that would work. Walk me through what problem that solves, because inevitably they're thinking something different than you are. And often then a light bulb goes off for you when you hear that, and other people chime in and you get to better results. But people have to be allowed. And I think this is critical, at least for me, building psychological safety, is I'll throw some idea out that I know is completely half-baked and invite the room to say, okay, what's wrong with that? Why won't that work? This is just a half-formed idea. And now tell me all the reasons why this won't work. And once people can see, oh, wait, we can pick apart an idea that the boss just threw on the table. And gosh, she was willing to just brush that aside for somebody else's idea that then we built on. Oh, okay. This is a place where we can do that. And it's okay.
And that's actually what we're creating. I know I've spent about 20 minutes complaining and talking about all the stuff that went badly, but like I feel like in this paradigm shift, we are actually, as a world, as a humanity, we are actually shifting the way we do business. And it's actually because we're seeing, to your point about the engagement, like we're actually seeing that the way we've done business no longer works for today's space and time. So that's what I mean by the paradigm is shifting, the way that we treat each other, the way that we treat ourselves. And I'm going to keep going back to this. I would be willing to wager my entire year's income this year that every person in charge that shuts someone down immediately, they don't feel safe themselves.
Hmm.
I'm going to let that hang out there. So prove me wrong, anybody that disagrees with that.
Yeah.
So, okay, Shannon, let's get into the amazing research that you kicked off. Tell us about the being forced out research and how it started, when it started, what it looks like, where it's at, all of the good stuff.
Yeah. So you're referring to some of the LinkedIn posts I've posted recently where I say we because I've been working with Julia Carrion, another wealth management executive, an absolute boss on this work. So we started writing a book together last year, Julia and I, really focused on, I'll say, what are the practical tips and things that we wish someone had told us, when we were starting our careers as leaders years ago. What are the obstacles we would have expected to run into, the bias, the double standards, the stolen ideas, frankly, and this notion of planned takedowns, of where are really talented women sort of at the peak of their power, peak of their knowledge, getting pushed out of organizations. So we started writing this book, not with a focus of, oh, let's educate the women on how to be better, because we think women are doing great. Thank you very much. But with the notion of, hey, you don't always know what these things look like. You don't always know how they show up in meetings and in organizations. And so to the extent that we could give women examples, they could be forewarned. They could handle those situations better. So could their allies. And they could probably protect themselves better. And we had maybe a paragraph or two about these takedowns, these planned takedowns. And then we really started thinking like, oh, wait, here's all these women we know personally that are in the midst of this right now. Okay, that's a little crazy. And maybe we should write a LinkedIn post, see if there's other women out there who have experienced it, are experiencing it, and would be willing to talk to us about it so that we could get a much more holistic view of what's going on, what it looks like. And oh my, sheesh. I mean, I don't think either of us could have expected the reaction. I wrote one post, I wrote a second post from a board perspective, which went viral. I've continued because people have written in and said, hey, can you also talk about XYZ aspects of it? So we've continued this series and have done more than 100 interviews with women now from around the world. This feels like it's an absolute epidemic. You noted the women being pushed out. I think there was an article in Time the other day too that positioned it as women, opting out. I'm not sure that's the case, but I think a lot of women are being pushed out.
May I say something?
Yeah.
In my case, I opted out because, and that was like I literally said, today's my last day when my boss told me he was going to break me.
Mm.
I opted out because there was something moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was given a stock bonus for hush money. There's so many things, and I see you've worked with Heather. She's been on a podcast. She's been on this show in the past. There's things that start to mobilize,
Yeah.
and they're hoping that you do what I did, which is today's my last day because of the torment, the gaslighting behind the back. My boss was just sabotaging everything that I was doing behind my
Yeah.
back, and it was just like, okay, again, I could keep doing this, and no, thank you. My my
Wait,
worth my worth and value is way more than that. So let me go out on the other side and start my own business. I'm out.
what you're describing is very typical of what we heard across these 100 interviews. So there are many women who choose to leave as a result of what we call a planned takedown, right?
Mm.
So, that there's a 12 to 24 month period, generally speaking, where looking back, you can see that, oh my goodness, all these things started to happen to me. And slowly but surely, you're being pushed out of projects that you used to lead. Meetings are disappearing. You're suddenly getting questioned over things you didn't get questioned. You're getting criticized over things that you would have never been criticized for before. And over time, right, slowly but surely, that organization is chipping away at your authority. They're chipping away at your self-confidence, and they're waiting for you to quit. I mean, they're trying to encourage you to quit,
Yeah.
right? Because then they don't have to pay you severance, then you might not sue, right? All of these different aspects. So, there's a range of women. Some women just go, I've had enough. My mental health is in the toilet. I got to get out of here for my own sanity. I'm just going to quit and find another job, or maybe they've already found another job. And there is some women who wait, and they wait until, they get fired or laid off or whatever the situation is. And then they either negotiate severance, some of them take legal action. It's a real mix. And what we've seen from the data is that the trauma, and I use that word very deliberately, the trauma from this experience is deep and it's long lasting, in part because I think these women to a T were all really high performers. They are women who, as I like to say, get shit done, right? They're heads down. They're not doing performance theater. Yes, exactly. I love that. They're driving results
Oh,
and they're great leaders. And so
yeah.
what we've been told our whole lives in the corporate world is, well, if you drive great results, you will get rewarded and you will get promoted. And we love that. And we're going to recognize that. And then there gets to be a certain point where suddenly that doesn't matter anymore. And so it's confusing, right? It's confusing. You're a great performer, and yet these, negative things are happening to you. And so the trauma is real. Many women have been diagnosed with PTSD after this sort of experience, and it takes a long time to heal from.
I think you've seen there's still things in me that come up through this conversation. There's still things, and it'll be 3 years in October, but it is a traumatic experience. So much of what you were saying, I went from pet to threat, and that's something I hear a lot. And right after corporate, I got really involved with the Workplace Psychological Safety Act and workplace abuse and all of that because I felt so strongly we got to do something. Yeah, to your point, I was always the highest performer, like up in the higher quadrants. And it was almost like leaders never knew what to do with me necessarily because I was always in that quadrant. And there was like, there's nowhere for her to go. What do we do? But at the same time, the last role that I was in, there would be things happen, such as I'd be in a conference call that I would be managing a really big launch or something, and I would need to drop. My boss would stay on and would say to the group, okay, Amy gave you a deliverable. I'm giving you a different one. And then no one would tell me. So
Oh,
that's the kind of stuff. And then like my boss would also have me put together executive presentations or for the C-suite. And then we would get in the room and I would start presenting and they would say like, I don't know where you got this. I don't know why you're presenting this in front of everybody. That's the kind of stuff. Can you imagine? And so I started talking with HR and with his boss's boss, boss's boss's boss. I was like, I don't feel safe. This is like really something's happening here. And that's
mm.
when they gave me the stock bonus. Like, oh, is it okay now? And I was like, no. And it just got even worse. And that's where, to your point, because here's the other fortunate part too. Heather has an app, Sierra Gross has an app. There are these apps now that you can document your experience. And so you can help build your case.
Yeah.
What happened with me was that when it got to the point where I said, today's my last day, there was an investigation launched. And of course, they didn't quote unquote find anything. And so it was just like my word against theirs. And that's where it's like, well, we don't have a law. It's not illegal to psychologically abuse someone at work. So it just becomes this, okay, you're out of a job. You can't prove anything. You're not getting anything in response. And then you're out there on your own in this wild job market. And so I say all of this because right now, unfortunately, I don't see there's like not a good solution for when
Mm.
you're in that, when you're getting taken down. Maybe you could shed some light on that. But to your point, it's like you either stay and endure the abuse and get further into your trauma, or you take a big hit in other places, financially or otherwise. I would opt for the latter. Obviously, that's what I did to make sure I wasn't continually being harmed. But I know everyone like that's different for everybody. It's just what are the options?
Yeah, I mean, certainly if you notice this is happening to you or you realize this happened to you, maybe a little bit from this conversation, people can go look at, I'll continue to be posting triggers and things like that, what you might be seeing on LinkedIn. So if you notice some of these things are happening to you, let the flashing lights, pay attention to those, like, because we all have instincts that like something isn't quite right. But I would say, do document everything, literally when you get out of one-on-ones with your boss or conversations or things that you get promised, emails, collect those, but document the timeline of what started happening, when did it start happening, where have people promised you things, where have things not been delivered that were promised. Build that timeline. Maybe you've raised a concern about something unethical in the company, and then all of a sudden some of this stuff starts happening. Maybe you challenge somebody in authority, you held someone accountable, right? That turns out was a pet of somebody else big in power, and all of a sudden you're sort of on the dark side. So whatever it is, just take note of everything you've done. Some women, get put into positions where they have 2 or 3 job responsibilities now. Oh, somebody left. Oh, great news for you. We're now going to give you this other responsibility. And let's just say you ask for more pay. Well, wait a minute. You've just given me all this additional responsibility. How are you going to change my compensation? And I would say many times, right? The experiences, the interviews I've done, like nothing gets changed, but people get promised a lot of things. Document that, right? All of these things are things that you can either go work with a lawyer or some sort of employee advocate to negotiate severance at a minimum, And those people, many lawyers will work on contingency so that, they get a percentage of whatever they get for you, because some women aren't in a position where they can afford to pay a lawyer. An employee advocate might just be able to help you craft how you're going to talk to your company should you decide to leave. I mean, if you can find another job while you're employed, great. That doesn't work for everyone, particularly because of the mental trauma you're going through. You might not feel as confident as you did before. The job market might be crap, whatever. It might be difficult in your particular industry. So, positioning yourself at least to negotiate the best severance possible, if not a lawyer, a lot of times these things don't end up in legal action. A lawyer might send a very stern letter and the company might come through then because they don't want the bad press of a lawsuit either. So, at a minimum, you want to be able to protect yourself. And that all starts with documenting what's happening, documenting what you're promised.
Yeah. I would also say now as a life coach, as an energy coach, also surround yourself with people who you trust and are your allies and that can see your soul and that can remind you in a space and time where you might not be able to feel it for yourself. That
Absolutely.
person can mirror back to you how freaking incredible you are, and it's not you. So I feel like that's something I didn't have on the way out, and I would absolutely get someone that's in your corner that can be there as your kind of sounding board along with that group. And again, to your point about finances and things like that, but it's worth it to build that up so that you can go into any situation 10 toes down with your experience and be able to advocate on your behalf and at least get out with both your health, because it's not just mental. It takes a toll on your entire body. I
Oh
will
yeah,
say.
you're
I will
stressed. You're not going to sleep well. You're going to be
know.
great, right? I mean, you might not be exercising the way right. It has a total impact on women, and I completely agree with the mental health aspect of go see a therapist. If you've got friends in your corner, like I wouldn't count on your mentors, your former mentors at work to help you with this. Like people outside of work who, like you said, can say to you, but you're amazing. Remind you, these are all the great things you've done. You can totally do all these other things. These folks are not treating you right. It's not about you. I would say that is one of the first things as women talk to me, and I probably get like 3 to 5 DMs a week from women that this is happening to. And my first comment to them is remember, this is not you. This is a broken system. This is just a broken system. And it's happening to you and it feels like it's only you, but it isn't. And in part, it feels like it's only you because it's been so silent. We haven't talked about this as a society.
So I want to ask you about that. When you say broken system, isn't it operating exactly the way it was designed, though? Like,
Well,
and
yes.
and unfortunately, I say that because unfortunately, some people have actually been brazen and being like, I don't care that women are leaving in droves. Like they've been pretty brazen about that. So let me ask you, in this time and place in this world where like companies might not be caring that women are leaving in droves or that this is all happening, what's the next step for this data, for this research, for this book? Like, what are you hoping to do or achieve?
I mean, we're hoping to end the silence, that more women are willing to speak up about it, that more companies and boards realize that it's a problem and actually even care that it's a problem. Because at the end of the day, it's about results and more diverse teams drive better results, period, end of story. All the data points to it. The data also points to that there's no diminishing returns for more women in leadership. So, when are we going to see that? But I'd be happy with more equivalent. you know, and I do think these people that say, I don't care, well, their results are going to prove them wrong over time.
And they're going to close, honestly.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give an exact example of this happening. I was part of Babies R Us, Toys R Us, and
Hmm.
back in the day on the national marketing team, and the leadership at that time had this mentality. All they cared about was the bottom line. Well, they literally went out of business. And I keep saying, some business course is going to take this as a case study as Toys R Us of like what happened. So okay, as we start to wind down, I want to go to a post that you made recently on LinkedIn, and it ties nicely together for the women listening. And if you suspect you're starting to be taken down, start taking action. Like Shannon said, start documenting before your mental health, before your confidence gets wobbly. Get yourself into a position where you can exit in a way that your own life, whatever you need, you can start making moves. You wrote, you don't always see the takedown coming. In fact, most people say that it likely started 12 to 24 months before they were ultimately pushed out. But in hindsight, the initial trigger was there in plain sight, such as a reorg or strategy shift, a new boss. You challenged the status quo or someone in power. You held a favored employee accountable. You questioned compensation, workload, or bias. You outperformed. Those are just some of the examples of the starting place. And I think this is really important because I just want someone to start understanding when it's happening sooner so that it
Yeah.
doesn't get to that psychological point when nothing in your life is okay. And to your point, when you go to get another job, you're not showing up as that unique, really brilliant, magical person that you are. You're bringing with you, that mindset of what you have in the current workplace. So tell me a little bit more about this post.
Mm. I mean, those are the sort of core categories, which I think give women a real good starting point to say, if you know a reorg is coming in your organization, a lot of times people, leaders will know something is coming. They might not know the specifics, but be on the lookout, right? It isn't necessarily to change how you show up. You may still challenge the status quo, and you should if there's something wrong in the organization, if you really believe that there is an issue, the company's on the wrong course or this team is focused on the wrong thing, speak your mind. And I think a lot of women are strong in that way, that we are willing to say, well, wait a minute, something's not quite right here. But know that sometimes those things have consequences in organizations. And so be on the watch for some of those things. It's not to change your behavior necessarily, but to be aware, right?
I think it would be amazing from this conversation if a woman in this moment is having a takedown. She gets so unabashedly not giving a fuck and goes in, stirs shit up, and really owns, oh, this isn't me, and they're gonna have to pay me out. How
Yeah.
cool would that be? And again, it's hard to get to that place when you are day after day.
Well, and I think, part of the power of ending the silence, right? I think in silence, the status quo has power, right? The patriarchy has power. As women who are experiencing this, the more that they talk to other women, even within their own company, right? Of like, hey, this seems to be happening. What are you experiencing? There's power. I mean, I know of several women, all from the same company, all pushed out for various reasons that link exactly to what you just mentioned in terms of those triggers. And guess what? They're now all represented by the same lawyer who now has the evidence across multiple women to say there's a pattern at this organization. This isn't one woman that now I'm pushing against, I'm pushing the rock up the hill for this one particular woman. There's multiple women. And now that is a much stronger case for all of those women to get what they deserve coming out the back end. And so that's the kind of thing, like, not that everyone works at such a big organization where this might be happening in droves, but, if you think it might be happening to you, think back on other women who have left the organization earlier than you thought they would, who, quote, retired, who opted out, who whatever. Reach out to those women, see if that's actually what happened. I mean, you just don't know because people don't talk about it. And so maybe they have a lawyer to recommend. Maybe they can help you in terms of things you should be thinking about or things you should be doing. But we've got to end the silence around it and shine a light on it, as Julia would like to say.
Amazing. And that's exactly what I felt and what I experienced is that for me, raising my hand and saying, this is what happened for me. So many women came into my DMs and said, oh my gosh, this happened. And, I was at a place where I wasn't in the place I am now where I was wanting to organize that, but it was validating that women would come to me and said, I experienced the same thing you did. That's wild. And it was just like, oh my gosh, like this is a pattern and that they do this. So, okay.
Deep breath.
So, Shannon, where can women that are listening or anybody that's listening, where can they find this research that you've done? And when's the book coming? Like, where can someone get their hands on all of this good data?
Well, I'm continuing to post it on LinkedIn, so please join the conversation. We've been finding that just the comments and the conversation, people sharing the post is really broadening the reach of it globally, which has been fascinating to hear that, oh, guess what? It's happening in the UK, it's happening in Australia, it's happening everywhere. So that's been really helpful. We are currently talking to some publishers about the book, so fingers crossed we'll make some progress on that and be able to get it out in the coming year.
If you had the opportunity to run across someone who was actively taking a woman down, what would you say to them?
Oh, goodness, what an interesting question. I guess I would ask them what's in it for them. Because I'm guessing that's where it all lives and dies. It's like, what's in it for you? And is that worth it to you? I mean, I do wonder how some of these folks sleep at night. And I don't have an answer for that because I'm not the person who would do this, right? I'm such a big advocate of women and have mentored women and men throughout my career. And I'm such a believer in developing people and developing talent and letting all voices rise. And so I find it perplexing. And I would encourage, I guess, those folks to really look inward.
Yeah. So we'll find you on LinkedIn. I'm excited to now join the conversation much more, and I will do that. Anywhere we can check you out or follow your work or the book, or is there a website?
Not yet, not yet. LinkedIn is probably the best place for now. Yeah.
And for me, Amy, you can find me on LinkedIn or at unlockthemagic.org. Any women who are experiencing this, I both have the experience of having been taken down and also now as a coach, I show you how to remember who you are so that you can make that next step. So come find me. Let's talk. Closing remarks as we wrap up.
Oh, thanks for the conversation. And I'm grateful that you're highlighting this for people because I do think it feels so personal and yet it's systemic. And I think there's healing in just knowing that.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ13 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.